All right, haves and have not fans. Now, there are a number of various, follow-up videos after the series finale. It's hard to believe, but in a few days, it will have been a month since the finale had aired. Of course, we had the 2 weeks of the reunion specials, part 1 and 2, but in terms of the actual series as a whole, yeah, this upcoming Friday marks a month. So this particular video is going to be, I wanted to order, these 10 particular characters from, the one that I dislike the least to the most hated one, but I just have different reasons for hating most of these characters, so it's kind of hard to even put it in order. For example, there might be a character on this list who I may have liked for like maybe 2 or 3 seasons, but then it got to the point where they were just insufferable. So I think I'm just going to list off 10 particular characters. I know it might be a bit unprofessional, kind of like in the sense of, let's say, Watch Mojo or one of these other bigger YouTube channels that do countdowns. I just feel like listing 10 is a good place to start. And you can let me know if there are any characters who didn't make my particular list that you hated. Now remember, this is a least favorite, and I'll list the character name and I'll give an explanation as to why. And then on the flip side, I have another video about my 10 favorite characters. But that video, that's going to be pretty interesting. So without further ado, I'm just going to name off 1 and then go 1 through 10 and go from there. So number 1, Justin. I think it goes without saying that if you've been a long time subscriber of my channel, then I've never been a fan of the Justin character. It was a somewhat interesting concept because yet again we had Jeffrey trying to act a little bit more like Candice, because I'm not necessarily blaming Candice for this, but she was the one that told Jeffrey to kind of, seduce Justin in order to kind of get him on their side to help out with the whole Quincy murder. And it's interesting because Jeffrey got too personal, things like knowing his parents' name and where he lives, kind of like Amanda in regards to Professor Cannon. It's like, well, it's Candice's fault that Professor Cannon raped Amanda. It's like, not necessarily, because she was the one to suggest going over there dolled up in order to persuade him for a retest. However, she couldn't account for the whole raping thing. So it's one of those things where Candice was in a do as I say but not as I do kind of thing. But at the same time, Justin wasn't horrible when he first started out, because he was the kind of character where I didn't think when he was in the series he was going to wear out his welcome. But I forgot, it was the season finale, the Veronica show. And then as we moved into the next season, there was a good stretch of 10 episodes where this was after Jeffrey was in jail because Veronica pretty much, ratted on him about Quincy Maxwell, and he got arrested. And then basically exposed Justin as being gay and his affair to his wife, who was the judge in that particular case. And as a result, at one point of every episode, Justin would go through the jail. Harrington, make Jeffrey get up, put him in handcuffs, take him back to the interrogation room, and have his way with him. And those scenes could range between 5 to 15 minutes. And I remember the episode Afraid of Flames. The episode after such a long hiatus, wondering whether or not Melissa and Veronica made it out of the car alive. And yet we spent over 10 minutes, over 25% of the episode with Jeffrey and Justin. And I remember that episode being like only 30 something minutes long. Yet we wasted so much time on them. And of course, as the years progressed, Justin became more and more annoying and blaming Jeffrey for everything. And then Jeffrey playing along for the most part, just not knowing how to say no. It's kind of interesting because with Justin, we saw a a deprogression, I don't even know if that's a word, but of a character regression of Jeffrey, where it was awesome to see him one up his father by standing up to Veronica before David did. But then you have Jeffrey in a situation where it's like he's literally in the same toxic, not even relationship with Justin that David was with Veronica. So I mean, you could be gay, straight, or whatever. Toxic is toxic. So Justin, I feel, completely overstayed his welcome. To be honest, and this isn't any shade, but I've said this for years, I would not be surprised if Tyler didn't keep Justin on the show for so long, only because of the fact that he and Tinka Sumter were a thing. I feel like if those two weren't together, I could see him being killed off maybe 2 or 3 seasons before he finally died. But that's just my opinion. So, number 2, well, it should come as no surprise, Jeffrey Harrington. I mean, I remember doing a video, was it earlier this year or last year, but I did a video saying that Jeffrey really isn't the quote-unquote victim one would have you think he is, because there have been plenty of times where he'll just hook up with these guys, whether it be Justin, Landon, Madison, and he'll use them. Like, usually whenever he's pissed off about something or someone, typically Veronica or Justin, he'll go have sex with one of these guys, and it will be an amazing time. And I don't know what it is about the Harrington men, but there's just something about them that makes men and women go nuts. And whenever they try to call up Jeffrey, hey, do you want to go out? Hey, do you want to do that? Jeffrey is dismissive, and he really only calls these men up when he wants something from them. So if you go back and look at, you know, a various number of episodes of Jeffrey, you'll notice that. I mean, it could be him utilizing his therapy experience and know-how in order to manipulate these people, but either way, he always bites off more than he can chew, no pun intended. And I mean, he might like toxic relationships just based off his parents. And I mean, it as messed up as it is, there is actual, you know, evidence that typically people would want to date someone who reminds them of their parent or parents, especially if they don't have the best relationship example growing up. They might unintentionally attract or gravitate towards a similar relationship dynamic in their particular personal relationship with someone else. But I think Jeffrey was way too wishy-washy. Here's a perfect example. If you're a Disney Channel fan, even if you don't watch it now, but back in the day, The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. I think it's a great show that still holds up. I feel like I saw more episodes, and look, please stay with me. This is going to be a point here. I feel like I watched way more episodes of The Sweet Life on Deck than The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. Doc Shaw was actually in a few episodes. Remember Malik from House of Pain? And when you look at that particular show, Zach and Cody was interesting because they had a great dynamic when they were in the hotel. You know, obviously you have the book smart one, and then you have the rebel brother. But then when they got to Sweet Life on Deck, it's like they kind of pulled the pains where they took the character traits of, you know, that person and then kind of dialed it up. Like, Cody was just an insufferable know-it-all, a wimp, a control freak, whereas Zach was a bit more tolerable. You know, I think he lost weight as the season went on, or the series went on, a womanizer and everything like that. So he was kind of consistent, but Cody was just written to be, you know, just a jackass, a wimp. And I feel like that's the same thing with Jeffrey. I felt like he really was coming into his own. What was it? Enough? I think that was the title of the episode. Enough is enough, or whatever. Basically, the episode where he stood up to Veronica saying, I'm done. I'm done. And then that's the episode where Veronica burnt the mansion down. But then after that, we meet Justin, and then Jeffrey just becomes a punching bag. And sure, he had plenty of moments where I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Jeffrey had the most quote-unquote hits in on Veronica than any other character. The defibrillator, stabbing her, pushing her off the balcony. There have just been a number of times where he's literally stood up and fought his mother where nobody else would. And those are interesting moments, but I think Jeffrey was a character who just got stuck on stupid, for lack of a better phrase. And I feel like that's what ran that character into the ground. Definitely one of my least favorites. I just feel bad because if you go back to like season 1, the first half of season 1, he was such an unlikable character because he was a creep. But then when he came out to his parents, Tyler Perry wrote him in such a way that you felt bad for the character. So it's a damn shame where we saw progression, but the moment he met Justin, it all went downhill. All right, number 3, Wyatt. This is going to be short and sweet. An addict. If there was just one word to describe him, an addict. Yeah, there were interesting times where his story was looking like it was going in a good direction. And when I say good, obviously not that it was a good story because it was a tragic one, but we never really got a lot of follow-up. You know, like after finding out he was, you know, inappropriately touched and whatnot at the Bible camp, and you know, then Bananas Foster when he explained the happy times he had with Catherine and Jim before he slit his wrist. There were moments where I'm like, damn, Tyler, why don't we have more moments like this, as opposed to him getting drunk, him getting high, getting arrested, being put into rehab, breaking out. Kind of like, you know, with Jeffrey standing up to Veronica, but then all of a sudden his character just fell off a cliff. The same thing happened with Wyatt. He met Anna. Is it Anna? I don't know. Frozen. She was his rehab facilitator. He was on the road to recovery. He was clean. I'll never forget one of my favorite Jeffrey Wyatt moments. I never really shipped those two, but I just thought they were cool as friends. When those two were on a walk, I think they were doing photos, you know, like because Wyatt wanted to be a firefighter or something like that. And they were taking photos. He called Jeffrey, and Wyatt was talking with him, and Jeffrey's face lit up. Not in a, I love you so much. It was like he was genuinely happy for Wyatt because he could feel how strong his voice was. It was clear. It was easy to understand. Wyatt was clean. But as soon as he and Anna had sex, she left him because she broke the rule, you know, of getting attracted to a patient. And then after that, he quit the program and then went right back to his old ways. And sure, he had some epic moments. I mean, when he shot at his parents and whatnot. And I still don't buy him admitting to killing Amanda and yada, yada, yada. But it's a damn shame because Wyatt had potential to be such a great character. But kind of like Amanda, instead of being, well, she did get killed off a lot faster than he did. But I feel like with Wyatt, he should have either been killed off a while ago, or at the very least written off the show to be in rehab. That's honestly what I feel, because his character brought nothing to the show for such a long time. Number 4, I'm going to put, okay, number 4 and 5. Number 4 is Oliver and number 5 is Charles. Like, I don't hate Charles, but given how the final episode went, there was no need for Charles, for Oliver. That entire storyline could have been scrapped. But Oliver, I put a little bit higher on the list because he was such an annoying crybaby. I'd say one of the only scenes I didn't mind him in was one of his, I think his last appearance where, you know, he was suspicious of, what's his name? Jeffrey Owens' character, Senator Conley, and then Landon just jumped down his throat, and I'm like, damn, Landon, you know, Oliver didn't even do anything this time. But he was just such an annoying brat, to be completely honest. I thought he was going to snap at any moment and try to kill Landon, but he was just such a waste of space. And then after him, I put Charles. I honestly would have spread them out further on the list, but I kind of, you know, put them hand in hand. The storyline was just wasted. I just feel like as soon as Charles was introduced, Tyler Perry jumped the shark. We went from street level, state level politicians and judges all the way to the White House, which made things incredibly unbelievable. Don't get me wrong. I know The Oval is a series which revolves around everything related to the White House and the people who work in it, but that's the basis of the show. It is what it's supposed to be. The haves and the have-nots was never meant to go to that level. But as soon as we went to that level, shit got crazy. And it all amounted to nothing. Okay. Number 5 is, okay, Pearl, but only because we didn't see her enough. I think for me, Pearl was a character who, if nothing else, I would have loved for her and Veronica to face off. I know she had a moment with David. She had plenty with Jeffrey. And she was a no-nonsense Southern Belle type. There was a man who went in the house and I never saw him come out. He never came out. I think that it really would have helped if her and Veronica had a standoff, because the fact that in her own twisted way, they're really, well, in their own twisted way, they're very much alike. You know, they both forced their sons, who were obviously gay, to have sex with women in order to get them right, so to speak. And they blame other people for their children being gay, as opposed to, wow, maybe my child is actually gay. So I think Pearl was kind of slapped in the middle of this list, where it was wasted potential and I really wanted to see more of her. Not to mention, I really wanted to see her reaction to Tanner bombing Jeffrey and everybody else. So there's that. So I think Pearl was unfortunately wasted potential. Okay. Next up we have, hang on, that's number 7, Colby. Yeah, I just feel like he was a plot device for the sake of sending the message about the LGBTQ community. I'm assuming he literally died off screen once his body was dragged out of Veronica's house, because he never showed up in the finale. He was never mentioned. The only mention after that episode was when Colby was, Madison kept calling his phone but never got an answer. So at that point, I think it's safe to assume, yeah, Colby is dead. And that's really all there is to it. I just feel like, as somebody who isn't part of the gay community, I do read the comments, and a lot of people do, not even just viewers and subscribers who are part of the gay community, but straight people who say, hey, I got a few gay friends, I have a couple gay family members, and Tyler Perry has a knack for writing gay characters to be extremely overly exaggerated. Because as someone who says he supports the gay community and whatnot, he has a bad habit of misrepresenting them. And then, of course, I see people from the gay community on here who literally say, yes, it's a shame how Tyler always writes these gay people to be overly exaggerated, incredibly thirsty. Not everybody from the gay community talks like that, acts like that, walks like that. So I feel like, for me personally, one of the main reasons the boy he was kind of like RK in the sense of he had a number of funny lines that made me laugh so hard. Like, you know, when you talk about Justin going extra crispy because he burned himself up. I think that he had his moments, but overall, what really was a detriment to his quote unquote character was the fact that he came into the show at a time where there were like 30 new people. And I felt like, why the hell is he even there? So for me, Colby makes the list because, well, he might have had a couple good moments, but overall, he wasn't really necessary to the story. All right. Wow. This is... Okay. Number 7, Benjamin Young. I know a lot of female viewers are going to hate me for it. And I'm not talking about Tyler Lepley. I'm talking about the character of Benny. One of the things is we never got follow-up on his personality shift after coming out of the coma, you know, after he got off life support. So Benny was acting so differently after getting out of the coma. No one questioned it. Then towards the end of the series, he was becoming more, he was out Candice-ing Candice, sleeping around with a bunch of people, not giving a crap about Hannah's teachings. Didn't worry about doing the right thing. He was using his people, or the people around him, not as friends, but as pawns. I mean, literally, when you think about how Benny treated Mitch for much of the series, that's how Candice treated Jeffrey and Amanda. Basically, pawns who were somewhat friends, who she sort of cared about, but deep down, she only cared about herself. It is like, hey, as long as you get me out of this situation, I don't give a damn what it costs you, what the consequences are that you have to face. I just know that I need to get out of this scrape and you're the only one that can help me. That's pretty much Benny's dynamic with Mitch. He was selfish, he was cheap, he was a womanizer, and he got really annoying. So for me personally, I feel like Benny had a lot of potential. I love pre-coma Benny, in season 1. It's a damn shame he never met Wyatt on screen. I was honestly hoping that at one point or another he and Amanda would have met each other, because of the fact that they're both the kind of naive but good-hearted sibling to a rebel of the family. You know, Amanda with Wyatt and Benny with Candice. It was a crazy storyline with his cougar relationship dynamic with Veronica. But overall, it's like Benny was just a person who you thought would have made it to the end of the race, or at the very least, he would have died sacrificing himself as opposed to going out the way he did. So I'm not going to stay on it too long, because I feel like if I do, this video is going to get a ton of dislikes. But Benny just became dumb. Benny was kind of like the Kim Parker, you know, Kim on the Parkers, Eric on Boy Meets World, characters who were never super intelligent, but at the same time they were good friends, they were good people, they were good children to their parents. They weren't the best students, but they were doing all right. I mean, we never heard about, you know, Benny being on an academic honors list or anything, but he made it through high school. But at the same time, as the series they're in goes on, they get dumber for some reason, and it makes no sense. I mean, hell, Hannah says it, Candice says it. You know, you've always been kind of slow, and it's like, what? I remember during the early episodes of the series, my mom was like, you know, what little boy grows up and dreams of being a tow truck driver? No shade, but it is a valid question. It's just like, I know as a kid you might say, oh yeah, I want to be a garbage man, because when you're a kid and you see the garbage truck, you know, like compress all that trash, it looks awesome, because at the time you're playing with Hot Wheels and monster trucks and everything. But as you get older, nobody wants to be a damn garbage man. But hey, everybody has to do certain jobs when they grow up for one reason or another. But I honestly can't tell you anybody I went to high school with who said they wanted to be a garbage man, they wanted to be a tow truck driver. But that's not to knock on people's dream. But I will say, on the flip side of that, there were times in the series where Candice would say, see, that's the thing about it. Benny thinks too small. Mama's always suspect because she doesn't want to jump into something that doesn't feel right. Not to mention, she's too slow to work in and not dumb, but I mean, like, she moves too slow for the fast-paced world that Candice wants to be a part of. So I think overall, Benny was a lot of wasted potential, where he was a good character at one point, but then after that, let's be real here, he was just mainly eye candy for the women. Alright, so then we get to number 9, Candice Young. I don't know why, but I really loved Candice for a good stretch of the series, but then we got to after Quincy Jr. died, and we got the Pimp Candice story arc, and then the whole money with Wyatt, and I'm not going to repeat it, but you all know there have been a long stretch of videos, mainly the last few years, I have stated how much I've hated Candice for how she was written. There was a time where Candice was definitely the character you love to hate, but I don't know what it was, either when Charles showed up or after Quincy Jr. died. I just did not I could not stand the character. Yes, I know she did some very insufferable things in the early seasons, but everything felt like a chess game at that point. But then it got to the point where it's like, okay, this character is just stuck on being evil and malicious. And it was childish because of the fact that Veronica had took the crown as the baddest bitch on the show. So Candice's plan seemed pitiful in comparison. And on top of that, we get to the final couple seasons where they really watered her down. It's like, oh, she was in love and heartbroken. Now she's not as cruel and cold as she once was. And, you know, oh, trying to make people feel bad for her and trying to make her get back with Charles and everything. I wasn't buying it because I didn't care. You can't have a character be this evil, cruel witch for like almost half a decade and then try to switch it up the last couple seasons and make us feel sorry for her. It didn't work, at least for me. I feel like the moment people got on my side about not liking Candice was when she sent that guy Malik to rough up Hannah in order to get her to sign the paperwork over to move the money from Benny and Hannah's joint bank account back to Candice. And that's when people were like, nope, nope, you don't do your mama like that. And I was like, wait, after everything Candice had done up in that point, the fact that she sent a thug after her mom was the straw that broke the camel's back for you. Yeah, Okay. So for me, Candice, yeah, I kind of like Catherine Cryer, who murdered someone. People still root for them. It's like, no. Candice Young, sadly, beautiful, but just sadly wasted potential. It's like, you can't soften her up after like 7 seasons of hell and then expect fans to really sympathize with her. She never deserved that money. Alright, and then the final character on the list, and I put her kind of at the end because I'm Veronica Harrington. I love Angela. I love the portrayal of Veronica for a good portion of the series. I still say she should have died in the Veronica show, basically the episode where she was in the car wreck with Melissa. After that, her antics just got to be way too much. I think at that point, Tyler knew she was really the star amongst all the cast members. And that's not to put her above anybody else because they're all family, because we saw that during the reunion. But in terms of the character that brings the most viewers to the show, it was definitely Veronica, because even if an entire season was garbage, there was 1 or 2 antics you knew Veronica would pull to bring people back in. There would be that cliffhanger ending, there would be a shooting, an explosion, an outfit she would wear that would get people back. But I feel like it got to a point where Tyler just knew she's homophobic, she's going to set something on fire, she's going to go after younger men, and she's going to be about that money. And she always has a plan. I just think that for the most part, just like Candice to an extent, Veronica got stale. She got overly exposed. She was relied on too much. She was kind of like, if you watch CW's The Flash, the reverse Flash. Someone who had a great outing as the main villain of a particular season, but then for some reason, every time he's brought back into the show, his character gets worse as a result. I feel like that was the same thing with Veronica. I love the aspect of her having puzzle pieces. You know, basically, if anything happened to me, everything around her would just be kaput. She had a plan. You know, she was strategic. You were interested in her. You wanted to know why she did things the way she did, why she was the way she was. And in some ways we kind of knew, but then we never did. So I feel like, as opposed to telling an interesting, compelling story about Veronica and why she is the way she is in the present, Tyler just wasted too much time focusing on the antics to get shock value and ratings. So unfortunately, Veronica makes it onto my least favorite character list. Now, yet again, let me just say, a lot of the characters on the list were great characters who I loved for a decent portion of the series. Honestly, that only goes towards Candice, Veronica. I feel like on my list, Candice and Veronica were the ones who I've liked for a majority of the series, but then they fell flat towards the back half. Benny, I liked during the early seasons. Jeffrey had potential like around back half of season 1, season 2, and 3. And really, that's about it. Everybody else, loathe entirely. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And before I end, I'll just list off these 10 characters one more time. Justin, Jeffrey, Wyatt, Oliver, Pearl, Candice, Benny, Charles, Colby, and Veronica. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next video.